You wrote this book with your fellow millennials in mind,
This guy,
not
yeah,
necessarily those with military ambitions, but just everybody facing challenges in life.
yeah. Um, I mean, unconventional lessons. It's not a step-by-step guide on how to accomplish anything specific. The memoir is about as unconventional as I am. Um, but I wanted people, the people who took the time to read it, to leave with the idea that if a Jewish nerd from Miami can go back to combat after he loses an arm, they could probably accomplish whatever it is that they're striving to accomplish in life. And if I manage to do that in any way, that's a win.
And I think you make a good point because you're very self deprecating in that. But you say if a self described nerd, a one arm basket case like you can accomplish what you set your mind to, that anybody from any walk of life, whatever their circumstance, can become a hero in his or her own life. What do you mean by that? Talk more about that.
I mean, I think you just said it right there. Don't you agree that seeing another case of somebody who isn't really spectacular in any way, even today, I've had that adventure. I've gone on the adventure of a lifetime. I've traveled to a foreign planet, if you want to call it that. Done the whole Luke Skywalker thing on that mission, and I still complain about paper cuts, and I still have the same issues day to day that we all have. It's not like I solved this massive problem. It's just that I cared enough about a certain cause to figure it out, to pull off one extraordinary event. Does that read with you? Do you not think that we can all do that, given the right motivation, that we can all pull something like that off?
Well, I don't think situations like yours or any other situations make heroes. I think situations, circumstances, challenges reveal who someone is. I think if a circumstance comes up like you were in, or a natural disaster occurs and someone distinguishes themselves, I think all that situation did was give them a stage, an opportunity to reveal who they were all along. It just wasn't called on until that time. And I've seen people in the aftermath of hurricanes or tornadoes or in the California fires that do extraordinary things to help other people, to overcome incredible obstacles to save themselves, their families, their neighbors, other people's lives, who were nondescript individuals that you would walk by every day and never so much as notice. And they're touted as heroes. I think they were heroes all along. They were just waiting for the time that they were called upon to be who they have always been. And I think that is the same thing with you. I tell people, look, you need to star in your own life. You need to decide who you are and what you stand for, and don't be reactive. You need to find a passion, pursue it with vigor, and be the star in your own life. Don't be a bit player in your own life. To me, that makes perfect sense. And sometimes I have people say, well, that's easy for you. You have a television platform. You have millions of people that watch. It's easy to think about starring in your own life. But I think it's true if you're a plumber or a school teacher or a parking lot attendant or a stay-at-home mom or dad. I think it's important that people do and can find a way to star in their own life. You got to be who you are on purpose, and that begins with finding that purpose and then saying, why am I here? Viktor Frankl said it really well when he was in the death camps. He said, they can control everything about me, whether I live, die, sit, stand, eat, starve, but they can't control my attitude. That's internal to me, and that I control, and that's where it begins.
Yeah, that, I mean, Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning spoke to me tremendously, and well said. I think I'm still ruminating on the idea that these incidents reveal the heroes that walk among us, and I think that to a degree we all carry scars. There's no one who walks this earth without some version of a scar, and for me, it's visible, and it's a missing arm. And it gave me the opportunity to do something that people actually see. But we all deal with something, right? For some of us, it's divorce, it's cancer, it's the loss of someone close to us, and we have the opportunity when that scar happens to react the way that Viktor Frankl talks about, which is heroically. That can't be controlled. We're the only ones who control that. So I agree. I haven't quite looked at it that way before, revealing the heroes inside us, given the opportunity, but I really like that.
Yeah, as you say, everybody will face that. I think back in my life, I had a motorcycle one time. I didn't have a license for it, so we couldn't get insurance on it. And my dad told me, like, look, you can have this, but don't leave the neighborhood and do not let anybody else ride this because we don't have insurance for it. So I promptly left the neighborhood and let my best friend ride it. And he hit a Buick Riviera doing about 80 miles an hour, and he wasn't killed, but he was seriously injured. And we were barely scraping by at the time. And my dad walked into the hospital, and I knew, oh my God, he's going to kill me. I did exactly what he said not to do. I remember like it was yesterday, he walked into that hospital and he said, he better have taken that motorcycle without your permission. And that was a real choice point for me. I was 13 years old, and he looked at me with just eyes that just looked right through me. And I said, well, he didn't. I handed him the keys and told him it was okay to go. I'm sorry, but that's what happened. And, that was 50 more, almost 60 years ago. And I remember it like it was yesterday, and it wasn't dramatic. It doesn't matter to anybody else, but I never forgot that when I had a chance to lie or tell the truth, I told the truth at my own peril, and it started a pattern. That's just what I've always done. It wasn't something you put in the paper. Doesn't matter to the person sitting next to me, but we have a lot of little situations that ride on the slate of who we are. Sometimes they're big situations like yours. Sometimes it's like a hurricane or a forest fire or something that reveals somebody, but that's how we learn about ourselves. You had to have watched what you did and based on that made attributions to yourself about who you were. There's no way you could do this if you didn't. You said my mother and father, they took me serious enough to think we better react to this because he could do this. They believe that about you. There's a point you had to say, I can no shit do this. And when you cleared one hurdle, when you climbed that rope, when you crawled that 100 yards under netting or whatever you had to do, you had to get up from that and say, I just did that. I can do this. And you had to make that attribution to yourself. And that stays with you today, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely fades with time. It's weird to admit, but I forget my own experience. I forget my own life story. I just kind of have gone back to being this guy who sits at cafes in Los Angeles and writes with his dog. So yes, subconsciously it has to stick with you. It's such a part of who I am, but I didn't. I mean, I can't pretend like I knew I was going to succeed. That 8 months of crossing the red tape and retraining and having to do different exercises and tests for generals that would have to give the check mark of approval for me to move on to the next stage. I didn't actually know that I was going to make it until the day I was back in combat. And even then, I'm not sure if I believed it. So I certainly didn't take it for granted at the time that it was just going to work out. It's only easy to look back and realize that it was almost destined to happen with the attitude that I was approaching it with.
Yeah, that's what I say. The hero that's revealed in the situation, nobody knew that he was a hero, including him. It's got to be almost like an out-of-body experience where you're watching yourself, and when it's over, you got to have that moment where you look back and say, "Oh my God!"
Oh yeah, at least once a day back then. Yeah, every time I passed another hurdle, and I've got a good example for you. There's one test that I mentioned that you have to do an obstacle course in full combat gear that has the wall and the rope and all those different things. And the first time that I took that test with both arms before the injury, when I was a trainee, I failed by 2 seconds. I don't remember the exact amount of time that you had. It's like somewhere over 10 minutes. It's a long run. It's all these obstacle courses. I failed by 2 seconds, and I got woken up the next morning by my lieutenant. And he's like, "You're going to do this every morning until you pass." And because of that, I passed that second morning by 2 seconds because I didn't want to have to wake up again the next morning. But what's interesting is that after I was injured, the very first time that I took that test again without an arm, that's climbing the rope, that's jumping over the wall, crawling, parallel bars. I had to find like a funky way to do the parallel bars by sitting on them and scooting across. My time dropped by over 2 minutes the very first time that I tried it, minus an arm. And my record by the time I was in training to be a squad commander was a full minute lower than that. So I was doing better minus an arm than I was with both, and that's just attitude. It's how you approach things. It's perspective. It's how badly you want something. So yeah, there were some lessons learned.